On this week's show, I'm joined by Richie Thibeault, Interim Director of Hockey Operations for the Moncton Wildcats, and Matthew Gingras, former New Brunswick and Nova Scotia amateur golf champion and former professional golfer. Richie, what was your first memory of the game of hockey growing up as a kid?
It's a kind of a funny one. I remember personally playing. I remember one night playing hockey, and I was not the most skilled guy, so I ended up getting into some rough stuff. First shift of the game, my parents came to watch, and every family came to watch. And first shift, I got kicked out. So it was a little disappointing for the family. That's kind of, I remember my first real memory of hockey.
What sacrifices did your family make to put you in the game, and the impact that's had on your career in the game of hockey?
Yeah, well, for me, it's been a lot of sacrifice for my family because, you know, I've been doing hockey for almost 20 years now on as a second part-time basis. But most of the time it's been a full-time job, so the family's been very supportive for me over the last many years, you know, because you have to spend a lot of time away from home, whether it be finishing my day job at 5 o'clock and then driving 2 hours for a game and getting home at midnight and then doing the same thing the next day. So it puts pressure on relationships and puts pressures on family, and other people have to pick up the slack, if you will. So it's been a team effort at home as well, and it's allowed me to do what my passion has brought forward and allows me to do that.
What did it mean personally when the NHL came calling, the Calgary Flames, and that entire experience scouting at the National Hockey League level?
Yeah, I remember I was actually working over in PEI that day, and I was sitting in the parking lot of a place having lunch, and I got a call from the director of amateur scouting for Calgary, Mike Sands at the time, and he said, "Richie, I got your name." He said, "I don't know you." He said, "But Calgary's looking for somebody in the Maritimes, somebody who has the passion and wants to start from the bottom and work their way up. And we heard you were interested, and we'd like to know if you'd like to come on and try it out with us on a test basis so we could try you out, you could try us out." And this was like in October time frame. He said, "Why don't we do it till Christmas and see what happens, see if you like it and see if we like you, and we'll go from there." So the 3-month tryout led to a full year that year, and it led to 13 other seasons after that with the Calgary Flames.
How much pressure is on you as a scout to evaluate, and the reports? There has to be an element of pressure when you're sending players and reports to the mothership, so to speak.
Yeah, very much so. You learn pretty quick that, you know, from myself starting out as a part-time guy and my first entry into the scouting game. And then you get to a meeting in Calgary and you have 3 Sutter brothers sitting at the table, which has been their life, has been hockey. And when you talk about players and you talk about kids like Brad Marchand, and they have very, very strong opinions, and you discuss it, you quickly learn that you got to be able to stand up to your opinion. And if you waffle, they'll quickly discount you. So it gets to be, although it's a part-time passion thing, you learn pretty quick that you've got to be serious, and that you've got to be prepared to have the discussion and be strong in your conviction. If you believe in someone, push it, because that's why they have you there. They don't want somebody just to have the same opinion as them. They want somebody who's got a different opinion and bring it to the table so you can look at all aspects of the player.
During your NHL days, who was the most skilled player you saw in this region?
Yeah, well, it turns out my first year was a special year, and it's probably that first year that I seen one of the most skilled guys. I remember maybe the first game I went to was in Cape Breton, and it was Cape Breton and Rimouski, and there was this kid there who wore number 87, who had, I think, 4 goals that night, and he played against Cape Breton, and the defenseman on the other side was a kid by the name of Adam Party, who had been drafted by Calgary the year before I got there. And I think Sydney beat Adam Party like 4 times for goals. And so it was a good night for me to see Sydney, but a bad night for me to see Adam Party at the time.
How much scouting and advanced scouting do you do you know, talking about seeing Party that night. If Calgary would have drafted more players, let's say from the Q, you're responsible for them as well to give and provide feedback.
Yeah, for sure. It's like anything else. If you're a player, you prepare for the game, and as a scout, you prepare to go to your game. What I've been taught through different people and experiences is you go to the game for a reason. Make sure your reason is clear. You know what you're going to see, who you're going to see, and you have a purpose for your game, and you prepare with that purpose. It means preparing on the computer and knowing the lineups, knowing the ages, the birth dates, because the birth dates are important as who's available for draft and who's not. Stats as far as who's a scorer and things like that, and you and your research on players. So when you get to the game, you really have it nailed down as to why you're there. And again, different parts of the year depends on what you're looking for. But you're right, when you draft a player, and if Calgary drafts a player in this region, you have that added responsibility. You stay in touch with them. You know if they have injuries, if they need something, you check in with them after a game if you happen to be there. You're more there as a support system, and you report back to Calgary as to what's going on with that player and how the development's proceeding.
During that tryout process,
yeah,
what did it feel like personally to get that call saying, yeah, we want you, we respect your opinion, and we're going to have you on board for the next 12 seasons?
Yeah, it was a little bit, it was a total shock at first, and but you know what they did is they said, well, why don't we have an interview? Why don't we get together and have a discussion? And I remember the gentleman was in Moncton, and we met at in Dieppe here at a local restaurant. And the whole interview, he's asking me about players and what I thought. And I remember the player he asked me about the most was Corey Crawford. He says, you've watched him the last few years. What do you think? Do you think he'll be an NHL player? And my whole interview was based around Corey Crawford, as it turned out. He's turned out to be a pretty good goalie and a pretty good winner as an ex-Wildcat. So it was a big shock, and I was just pleased for the first 3 months just to be there. But over time, you have to perform.
Over time, Richie, as a scout, you're looking at players and their skill, yeah, their assets, but they're people first. Yeah. And that you had Brandon's experience, your son's experience, yeah, in the Q has probably shaped your experience now as the interim Director of Hockey Operations for the Moncton Wildcats.
Yeah, I said back 20 years ago when I was involved with the Wildcats is you want to treat every kid as if it was your kid. And it turned out that some 10 years later my son was drafted by the Wildcats, and I realized that firsthand that especially now it really reinforces to me that you want to treat kids like you want your kid treated. Brandon was drafted and played with the Wildcats and played in the local town, and he had some ups and downs. But that's going to happen with kids at this level. So you got to make sure that the kids have every opportunity possible and that you're fair with them. At the end of the day, if you could say that you've been fair, I think it's been a good day.
The business of hockey, we always talk about it. You hear it, the business side of the game. Yeah. How difficult, and you're living it right now, how difficult is the business side of the game when W's are equally as important as or more important than developing?
Yeah. When you're a scout, it's all about drafting them, making sure that they get to camp and they're the player that you said they were. And you're not really worried about wins and losses. You don't live and die by wins and losses. But when you're general manager of a hockey club, wins and losses are very important because we're in this game to win and to win championships. And you're trying to build the best team possible. So you've got to balance. The only way you're going to win is if you develop the right players and the right collection of players as a team. So at the end of the game, at the end of the day, you got to win. But it's critical that you develop the kids and that you try and put them in positions to succeed.
What advice would you give a 15-year-old kid entering potentially the CHL draft or the Quebec League draft? What advice do you tell those kids that they're aspiring to play in the National Hockey League? They want to get to the next level. Yeah. What advice from your NHL scouting perspective and now being part of a Q team, what's your advice to them?
What I tell the kids at 15 that we interview is dream. Don't stop dreaming. Because if you don't dream, you won't get there. And people do get there, so don't be afraid to dream. But as you're making decisions, make sure they're informed decisions. Look at all the options. Don't close doors to options. You know, some kids will say, I'm going NCAA, I'm not going CHL, or the opposite, and we'll just close the door and not listen to both options. There's pros and cons of each option, but make sure you listen to them and get all the information you need to make the right decision for you and your family. Because at the end of the day, if you don't get all the information, you're cheating yourself because you don't have the whole picture.
Is the pressure from an NHL scouting perspective the same as running a Q draft?
No, I think it's, for me, I found it's more for the Q draft. There's more pressure. But having said that, I enjoy it more because the preparing, you know, in the Quebec League, we get about 175 kids on our list. We got to know them all, we interview them all, we watch them all. It's strategizing who's going to be available where, making trades to get position, knowing how many draft picks you have, trying to pinpoint who you're going to get at the end of the day. It's a lot of strategy and a lot of execution, and you get that thrill that when you've done a good job that you and your staff, you could tell that you're happy with it or not.
The Ontario Hockey League, they have a mandate in place that they can't trade first round picks. What's your perspective on that, and do you think the Quebec League should adopt it?
Well, I love drafting in the first round. I do not like going to a draft and not having a first round pick. So for me to trade a first round pick, it's got to be an incredible offer because you build championship teams with top kids, and you normally get top kids in the first round. I know in Moncton we've had, in the last couple of years, we've had 3 first round picks, and our hope is to continue to have first round picks because you want the best players, and that's normally where they are. Statistically, kids in the first round make it more than kids in the second, third, and so on. So unless, if you're not going to draft in the first round, you better make good trades. But I'm not sure I believe in trading first round picks.
Looking at the Moncton Wildcats, what does it mean personally for you to be part of the franchise, a franchise that takes a lot of pride in being competitive every season?
Well, for me, the Moncton Wildcats has been in my blood since the day they started. I remember I was probably one of the first volunteers that volunteered for the club when Mr. Irving took it over. The first year, I was selling 50-50 tickets and managing some of the office activities. So I've been a Wildcat since day one. I've been a billet, I've been a booster club member, been a parent of a player, and now I'm the interim director of hockey operations. So if I can do it, anybody can do it for sure. So it's really been in my blood. So I take great pride in being a part of it and representing the organization. And there's nothing more I would love than to win. And it would be a lifelong success thing for me after 20 years to win as part of a Wildcat group.
Moving into the new building, new expectations.
Yeah, we have a very nice building. I've been through it lately, and it's pretty well done. It's going to be incredible. We've had some players through our recruiting process, and we brought them through the building, and you just see the eyes blow up. They just can't. They'd love to be part of this. And the facilities that our ownership has committed to doing are second to none about CHL teams. They rival NHL team facilities. They really do. And our players are going to have the best resources to perform at the ultimate level. So we're very lucky that we've got those resources and the facilities we're going to have. Just our players are going to love it.
Fondest memory, it's a difficult question, but fondest memory throughout your entire journey in the game of hockey?
Well, you know what? Fondest memory is, what I think about all the time is the people. And I remember one night I was at the top prospect game in Vancouver, and I was driving to the rink with Daryl Sutter. And Daryl Sutter has always been a guy that you see as a tough guy and a coach. We were in the car, and remember him calling his mom and asking his mom how she was, what she did that day. And it really brought me down to earth that it's about people. And I remember a couple weeks later we were at a game out in Western Canada, and I met Mrs. Sutter. And Daryl introduced me to her. She said, "Richie, I know you." I said, "How do you know me?" She said, "Well, I keep my Bible, which is the team media guide, next to my bed, and I know all you guys." So the fact that she knew who Richie Thibault was the fondest memory I've ever had in hockey, because it's such a great family and they're so passionate about the game. But you know what? They're excellent people over and above their hockey.
Well, you're an excellent person, Richie. Continued success with the Moncton Wildcats and scouting and developing players. We wish you all the best. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Craig.
Matthew, what does the game of golf mean to you right now?
Right now, it's a little bit of a transition into starting to like it a little bit more. I took 4 years of like a 4-year hiatus. I didn't enjoy the game anymore. Now I'm starting to get the bug of playing again, seeing Tiger play again. So just slowly starting hitting balls and playing a few games and starting to get the itch to play again.
You turned professional, you had a fantastic amateur career, and a lot of people on the outside might be looking in and saying, well, why is Matthew stopping the game? Why did he quit golf?
Yeah.
Really, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the obvious question. Why?
I just got sick of it. I played golf all of my life, and at the age of, let's say, 14, it started getting very serious, and by 15, 16, that's pretty much all I did. Even playing university golf, playing all year round, it's just non-stop golf every day, every week, and then eventually you just get sick of it.
Let's rewind.
Yeah.
Now that we've talked about why you transitioned out of golf, let's look at your junior career and how special golf was at that time.
Yeah. I just enjoyed practicing. I think that's the thing I enjoyed more, even more than playing. And the last few years playing junior, I had some great years. And probably the most special tournament that I've won in my career is probably at St. Andrews. It was the Future Links Atlantic Junior Championship. And I finished 1 or 2 under par, and I was never over par for the whole tournament. So that was something special at that age, and it was just a meaningful tournament and probably the most important one of my career, just to know that I have the ability to win golf tournaments.
How did you deal with the stress and the pressure over the shot in the moment? How did you deal with that on that stage?
You just learn from it. You just have to be in contention a lot and learn from your mistakes and learn what works and what doesn't work. And you just become comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. Yeah.
Winning the Nova Scotia Amateur, and then a few weeks later winning the New Brunswick Amateur, not a lot of people have done that at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Captured 2 major amateur titles within weeks in 2 separate provinces.
Yeah.
What did that mean to you personally?
It meant a lot, and if I take the 2 tournaments, I'd probably play it a little bit better in Nova Scotia. But coming back, and I had won the New Brunswick Amateur the previous year, so coming as defending champ and having won the Nova Scotia Am, you have a little bit of expectation of winning that one and being able to overcome and win that one as well. It's something special, and especially I think I won the Nova Scotia Am by 8 shots and then the New Brunswick by 6, so it's nice to win by big margins as well.
You mentioned the big margin. Did you allow people into that moment more than if it would have been tight and coming down the stretch? Meaning, did you embrace it? Because a lot of golfers, it's first tee shot, last putt on the 18th, you've got the
Zoned
blind.
in.
You're in
Yeah.
that zone for 5.5 hours.
Yeah, the funny thing is that in Nova Scotia Am, I won by 8, and still in the last hole, I didn't even know what was going on. Just because you're not playing on the PGA Tour, you only have your group with the leaderboard, and you don't know what's really happening on the golf course and what people shot. So, I mean, even hitting my tee shot on 18, I was still nervous. And on that 18th hole the previous day, I finished with a double, hitting it in the woods or OB, and finishing with a double bogey. So I was still scared on that tee shot, even though, well, could have made like a 10 and still won, but I was still nervous till the end and trying to make birdie, and ended up winning by 8. So, but I was grinding it out.
Sharing that moment, your dad caddied for you. Sharing
Yep.
that moment with him, and those tournament moments has to be special.
Yeah, especially just making decisions together, what clubs to hit, and just going through it, and just all the hours he spent with me practicing and just giving advice. It's something to win a tournament with him in that moment.
When did you know, playing college golf or university golf, when did you know that the pro game
Yeah.
was in your midst and in your reach?
Like, if I take my first 1 or 2 years, I was playing well, but I still hadn't really won a tournament, I believe. And then the third year, finally won my first tournament, and I also won my first NCAA tournament. So that was pretty special. And then the last 2 years, that's really where I started really dominating, winning a lot of tournaments, and becoming the best player on my golf team, and being able to play in 2 World University Championships with Team Canada. So started to get that confidence that, yes, I can play with the best players in Canada, and yes, I can play with the best players in the US. So it kind of puts in perspective that, yeah, I have a chance to play professionally.
Did you embrace that stage? Did you welcome,
I-
some of the best PGA Tour players, that's, like you mentioned, that's where they feel
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
That they want that pressure. Did
Yeah.
you feel that way?
That's when you play your best, and that's when you're most excited and you have that adrenaline rush. You play to get in that position. That's why you practice so much, and that's why you put all those hours in, just to get in that moment where you have a chance to win the tournament. It's an unbelievable feeling.
What advice would you give young players in any sport, young athletes that are focusing primarily all their energy in one sport? What would your advice be to them?
If you're a kid, try to play as many sports as possible, build those motor skills so they can help you with any sport later on and life in general later on. And if you focus too much too soon, you're probably going to get sick of it. I remember seeing studies where they took people that just played one sport when they were a kid, and saw later on when they were 40, did they still play any sports, and they were hardly active compared to people that played many sports. They were a lot more active in their later age in life. So it's just having a good balance when you're a kid of all those sports, and then if you want to specialize when you're 14, 15, 16, then go ahead, but keep that balance, because if you're too focused on one thing, it's going to burst where you're going to get sick of it. Yeah.
Well, Matthew, your journey in the game of golf and now in weightlifting is tremendous, and it's noteworthy, and you are a champion in many on the golf course and off. What's next, though, for Matthew Gingras?
I might play some tournaments next year in golf. We'll see. I'm just kind of learning to love the game again. And if I start loving it again, I might play a little bit too many tournaments and start competing, get the flow going. And in terms of bodybuilding, I might do a show in October. There's a natural category in the provincials this year, so it's kind of piquing my interest. I've done 5 shows up to now, and I was like, am I going to do another show? But I still kind of like it, so I might do one.
Well, important life lessons that you offer young athletes in your journey in the game of golf have been tremendous. Thanks so much for coming in today.
Thank you.